Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the culture wars, just to sort of define or to try and arrive at a definition for culture wars for the purpose of this essay, at least, is that the culture wars are about, you think it'd be about indoctrination, or that appears to be what it's about. But it's about the in the West, at least, the Western culture and history and social structure is to be all eradicated and denigrated and humiliated even, and in favor of something new that's going to replace it. Now, we're not really told what this new nirvana, this new paradise is going to be. We're only told that whatever went before is bad and must be got rid of because it's so bad. Now, typically, most people would say, all right, then, well, we're going to get rid of that. What are we going to replace it with? Why will it be better? How will it be better? Show us how it's going to be better. Well, it's because we're going to allow equality for transgenders, and then that will make the whole world a better place. And of course it won't, but the culture wars are about holding white Western culture as being eternally guilty of vague misdeeds, and that white culture is uniquely capable of and produced those misdeeds, and therefore must be eradicated because of it. That's sort of the general thing. Now, in really every Western institution that are meant to be upholding and supporting and defending our culture have now been given over to very activist groups that are wanting to destroy Western culture. Now, it couldn't be done without government complicity and active government agreement. So the government is spending your tax dollars that they take from you and using those tax dollars to make sure that every organization, institution in the West hates you. So you're paying handsomely for the privilege of being hated by your own institutions. Can you even get your head around that sort of madness? But there's not an institution I see or hear from or that's reported in the media that has got anything nice or kind or worthwhile to say about the West. I mean, you look at any mainstream TV station now, they'll say that the reason there's not lots of black lesbians in the national park is because of racism and fascism, white supremacy, Hitler. And the nonsense doesn't get challenged. No politician gets up and goes, "What absolute nonsense! You've just lost your job, buddy. And if you want to hate on white people, then we'll just take away your government funding. Suck on that." But none of that happens. None of that happens. And so, even when centre right or supposedly conservative governments come into office, they change nothing. They fund just as generously every one of these institutions that hates on white people 24/7, and they just fund them and they give them more funding and so on. Now, when they're in opposition or when they're not in majority in the in legislature, they talk tough. Oh, when we're in, we've got a majority, we'll show those bums. And so they talk tough about it and put out all sorts of articles in centre-right journals and magazines and online and so on about how they're going to really clean this up once they're in charge. But when they get in charge, they do absolutely nothing. In fact, if anything, they further the whole thing. A bit like conservative governments in England, they keep on saying we're going to get migration under control. We're going to bring down the migration. We're going to reduce it to some quite small number. But the minute they get into office, government, they increase the amount of immigration and do it generously and actively, and they throw their hands on me. Oh well, it's the human rights courts. They won't let us get rid of these people. Oh, they won't. We can't do anything. The courts. It's the courts said so. It wasn't us. It's the courts. Or they'll say, well, the business lobby, they say they want, they can't find anyone. There's no one to do the jobs. We've just got to bring in millions of illiterate black and brown peasants to do these jobs, because really they're not illiterate black and brown peasants. They're all rocket scientists, brain surgeons, and so on. They're all geniuses. So the government of the right, they, or supposed right at least, they're behaving exactly the same as the governments of the left. So clearly they're all controlled by the same master. They've even got the same slogans, for goodness sakes. So the globalists control them. The globalists have penetrated every institution. And so there's no one left or no one around to push back or even question it. The media is controlled by the globalists. Institutions are controlled by the globalists. The party machinery is controlled by political party machineries controlled by the globalists. They decide who will be allowed to stand for election in any district, and they decide who is going to be the president or the prime minister or the key people in the political decision-making cabinet. They decide who's going to be in charge of the NGOs and their slogans and so on. And so there's no one standing up for it, and the so-called right-wing political parties pretend that they're an alternative and they're going to do things differently, but they don't. But if we look at this whole idea of the culture wars, how important is it? Well, it's very important. If you changed all the head people in all the institutions, for example, all the major institutions, to people that were very pro-Western history, pro-white people, pro-merit and all these sorts of things, then the press releases and the information they would be putting out would be vastly different from what we see. There'd be a real pushback effect. Now, the globalists can't allow that. So same with the media. There's the most outrageous anti-white hatred is put all across social media. And yet, for some reason, the authorities and the police in Western countries don't even notice it, don't care, don't notice it, don't do anything about it. But if one straight white person says anything about, someone of the Islamic faith, then they've got the police at the door. So it's clearly one way. It's not evenly balanced out, or the law's not being applied equally and evenly. There's only one race that's allowed to be held accountable for their actions, and that's the straight white males, and to a lesser extent white women. But almost no others are. So we've got an incredibly perverse legal system on top of so culture wars are important, and the political right and even organisations that purport to be on the right don't really fight these wars. You've got small outfits on online that are constantly being demonetized and cancelled and put in the sin bin for weeks at a time. Even on a small channel like mine, if I put a word out of place, they sin bin me for a week or so, or a month, I think it was a while ago. So clearly anyone that's prepared to fight the culture wars from the other side, not from the globalist leftist side, but from the other side, is being emasculated as much as they possibly can without saying they're engaging in outright censorship, which they are, by the way. So the entire media sector, the entire information production sector, the entire institution sector, government, and so on and so forth, is all fighting the culture war against the white citizenry, against the white population, and against everything that white society stands for, merit and science and reason and so on. It's all being trashed in the interests of globalization in this case. So, but is it just a culture war? I see it as an indoctrination war, an attempt to just indoctrinate the population and children, adults. So you talk to, say, a 16, 17-year-old high school kid, even from a prestigious high school, and you ask them about climate change, it's a done deal. They've been inundated with climate change propaganda from the age of 5. Even kindergartens are waving it around these days. And so they've been inundated with that population. They've just been beaten over the head with it. And so it's something that's perceived as it's beyond question, like gravity or that oxygen is in the atmosphere. And it's just absolutely, it's an absolute fact. It's not up for debate, not up for discussion. It's not even nuanced in any way. It is absolute fact and very simple. Climate change caused by white man bad, CO2. I mean, they've got this tiny little set of parameters, and that's the full extent of their understanding of the whole thing of climate change. Now, whether you agree or don't agree with climate change, there should be room in a society that is based on science and reason. There should be room for debate and discussion. And but this is not accepted. So in this new world, no alternative view is accepted. Not even any questions accepted. So I would say the culture war can't be fought as long as the indoctrination mindset is there. But again, this is funded and supported, encouraged. You look at any right-wing government and you look at the people they appoint to the quangos and to the institutions, they're just as activist and anti-white, anti-Western hating as the people on the. I can't tell the difference between them. A right-wing government recently appointed someone to as like head of the museum in a big city in Australia, and this is a so-called right-wing government. And the first thing that this person did is say the museum's too white. That's got to be got rid of. Now, I happen to know that museum quite well, and there are entire halls that are dedicated to local Indigenous peoples and their art and all the other bits and pieces, and that's so to me that the non-white area is generously represented, and then they go back to sort of prehistoric times where all the people there are depicted as being black. So that's where, and so white, it's only in the area when you get advanced sort of science and advanced engineering and those sort of things where white people are. So once you look at it and say, well, that's what we have to do. White people look too good. White people look brighter. They look more capable. They look more intelligent. They've got more achievements. We've got to do something about that. We've got to not allow white people to shine in that way. We've got to fucking crush them, damn fascist Nazis that they are. And again, this is a straight white guy who's been appointed to this job by a right-wing government, and his task, as he sees, and he must have been told to do it, his task, as he sees it, is to pretty much eradicate white achievements out of the museum. And I think this is happening everywhere, and so I see it as an indoctrination issue. We can call it a culture war, but I think it's an indoctrination war. And one side has all the money, all the advantage, all the protection, all the support, and the side that would be able and capable of fighting back against this in the indoctrination war, or culture war if you prefer, has no money, no funding, is attacked and undermined and censored from every direction all the time. And it's a little wonder that it's a one-sided contest. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.